Hi guys, hope you're doing well. My name is Emma and it is monthly updates time. So this is just where I'm going to take you through everything that I've been working on in my knitting world over the last month, and there's a lot this month. Alright guys, I have a feeling this one's going to be a bit of a long one, so you might want to grab a beveragino or work on something because I've got a lot to talk through and it's all fails and finished objects. So it's fun. It's a little bit different to the usual whips, usually half done things. But yeah, let's I think kick off with the fails. So since these are fails, I don't have any of the pieces with me, so I shall pop up a little picture here as I talk through these pieces. So the first one I mentioned last episode, and that is my Mellow Mood sweater by Julia Prio. So she's gone. She's been ripped back, and oh my god, ripping back all of these pieces and having to untangle all of the yarn and rewind it and soak it and then wind it up again into balls, damn, that took a lot of effort on its own, crazy money effort. But the main reason I ripped back this piece, this was the very first sweater that I made, and in making that piece, I learned a lot around my kind of preferences and in terms of design and fabric and feel and all that kind of jazz. I didn't know I had these preferences when I started, so it's nothing against the pattern. I actually really like the pattern. It's very, very beginner friendly. But for me, the fabric that I had created was just too dense. The whole thing was just too heavy. It was so thick. I didn't really enjoy that. I did the turtleneck version because I don't own any turtlenecks. I thought I might try a turtleneck. I did not like that. It was too fitted against my neck. I was uncomfortable. I just hated it. I followed the sleeve decreases for the tapered sleeve, but it made my sleeve incredibly fitted, which just didn't go with the pattern. The body was a bit more oversized, but then having such a fitted sleeve looked a bit funny. So I didn't like that. It felt uncomfortable. The body ribbing was a little bit too tight. There were just quite a few things about it that I was just I would tweak this. I should really rip it back and tweak it, but I don't like the fabric. I don't like the weight of that fabric, so I'm not inclined to remake that particular pattern just because it's a heavier weight knit. Maybe one day I will, because as you'll see coming up, I do have a project that is knit in an Aran weight or worsted weight, whatever it was, that heavier kind of weighted yarn. And that one I actually don't mind because it's a blow-in yarn, so it's lightweight, whereas the yarn I was using for this piece was dense and heavy, so I just didn't like it. So I ripped that back and I reclaimed the yarn. So from that one I got I reclaimed, what did we get, some Temu yarn, which was it's a wool and polyester blend. So I got that black and tan, and then I also reclaimed, I held with that the Abbey Road The Wind Cries Merino blended yarn. In the color, the black was Midnight Lighting and the tan was Cooled Fire. So I've ripped back and I've separated out those strands, rewound and reclaimed them. I'll have a video coming up on that whole process, and then many moons later I will have a video where I might highlight some of the projects that I've since made using that reclaimed yarn, so you will see it feature again in the future. So I did that one. The next one that is a fail is my Deep Woods cardigan, which was free patterned by Drops Design. I hadn't done too much on this piece. I had just splits for body and sleeves, but again it was made in basically the same yarn as the Mellow Mood, apart from it was an alpaca version of that Temu yarn. So it was very thick and dense. I tried to size up in my needles to accommodate and make a looser weave and therefore less dense fabric, but it was still thick. The stitches looked huge. The yarn was not as good quality as the first yarn that I brought, and so it was there was knots in it, and then there were not properly twisted bits in it, so I had to keep cutting and weaving in new bits. So I just wasn't loving it. I mucked up the sizing. My gauge was not what I measured it to, and so then I started doing some increases, and then I was maybe it's too big now. I don't know. There was just a lot of things that I wasn't loving about the fabric that I was creating and the fit that it was leaning to, although it was hard to tell given that I hadn't knitted very much of it. But I just decided I didn't like it, and I wasn't probably going to wear it. And if I don't know, I've just gone through this phase where I'm like, if it's not perfect and I'm probably not going to wear it, what's the point in keeping it in my wardrobe? Like, it's just going to sit there taking up space. So I either need to reclaim that yarn and make something that I am going to wear, or get rid of it, like gift it, do something with it. So anyways, I've ripped that back and I'm reclaiming that yarn, and I've got a few ideas to use for that. I also had this Random As black beanie. This was actually one of the very, very first things that I ever made, and I used that same Abbey Road The Wind Cries Merino in the Midnight Lighting, which is the black color. This was when I knew like basically nothing about fabrics, yarns, anything. I had watched a YouTube tutorial in order to make a beanie, and then I just kind of picked up some yarn that felt nicer than the cheap yarn that I did initially have and tried to remake it. And it looked fine. Like, I actually like the beanie. It's very slouchy, but it was a little bit too big. I did a 4x4 rib on it, like a really wide rib on the rim, because I thought I might like it, and I didn't like it. And also, the whole time I was wrapping my yarn the wrong way around the needle, so all of the stitches in stockinette were actually twisted stitches. So like, you couldn't tell, like looking at it, that there were imperfections or anything. Like, it looked fine. But for me, knowing what I know now, it's like, I can rip this back and redo it and make it so much nicer. So that was my thoughts in that one. So I was like, I'm going to get rid of that and reclaim it at the same time. So I don't think that's ever featured on this channel, that beanie, but it was one of the very first things that I did in it, so that's gone. All right, and the last piece that I'm putting into the fail category, which was a little bit more of a tough decision for me to actually put this one into it as a fail, but then I was like, no, if it's not perfect, we shouldn't keep working. Like, why are we spending all this time and money on it if we're not 100% happy with it? So the next fail is my ribbed tee, which is a pattern by Knitting for Olive. And to be honest, this wouldn't necessarily been a fail had I not recently discovered some new affordable yarn options that are actually quite nice. So because for this piece, I'm using 2 Temu yarns held together. So I had a like a merino blend. It was merino and nylon. It's like a sock yarn basically. And the other yarn was meant to be like a silk yarn, which I had some left over at my stash, but then I realized it didn't have as much meterage on it as I thought it did. So then I didn't have enough to finish my project. So I had to buy some more to finish it, but they didn't have the same yarn. It was discontinued. So I brought a different silk yarn, which is a touch thinner. I was decided at that point that I was going to give up on the project, but when I went to return it, they do that thing where they're like, keep it and we'll refund you anyway. So since I had the yarn, I was like, I wonder if I can make this work. I tried holding it double. It was a little bit too thick. So I held it single. It's a little bit too thin. Anyways, I kind of was like, oh, look, still holding one strand of each of those yarns together is fine. There's a slight textural difference in the piece, but visually you can't tell any difference in gauge or anything like that. From where I've switched between the 2 different silk yarns. But that's what I was using. And then I've recently just gone through and like brought a shit ton of yarn. Like, no joking when I say a shit ton of yarn, like, it's unreal. There will be a yarn haul coming, trust me. But yeah, anyway, since I discovered some other yarn options that I think are just probably a little bit better quality, and one of the yarns that I found was Indigo Woolen Mills. I brought some yarn from there and it seems to be pretty nice. So their yarn is wool and it's super wash. And I was kind of thinking about it for the ribbed tee, and I was like, it is a fitted garment and it's sitting like right up in your underarm. So it's probably ideal that that particular piece is machine washable for obvious reasons, versus like baggy sweaters or something that are a little bit loose. You can kind of get away with not washing them as frequently. But yeah, so that's why I was kind of like, I can use a bit of quality yarn. Probably a more convenient yarn. I might redo it. So that's the first reason why I decided to kind of scrap the rib tee, is because of yarn choice. The second is because of fit. So the piece is actually coming out a little bit bigger than I anticipated it to. So because of the ribbing, it still looks fine because it cinches in, but you can tell across like the chest area that the ribbing is not like really stretched out or anything like that. It's actually quite cinched in. So it is probably a size, maybe 2 sizes too big on the shoulder bit. To compensate for that, once I split body and sleeves, I did start working some decreases, and I initially was just going to do like one set of decreases, but then I tried it on again and I was like, oh, I could possibly go like another set of decreases, but I did my decreases differently. So the first set of decreases, I did like 4 ribs decrease, and then the second one I did 3 ribs decreased. I think that's how it worked out, but you can see it looks a little bit different, right? So there's that. There's the fact that the sizing's a bit off. My shaping looks a bit odd. And then there's a slight difference in the feel of the fabric from like changing the silk yarns out. So those kind of tiny little imperfections that are, to be honest, no one else would notice any of those imperfections. It's just like me, I would notice. And that's the reason why I decided that I think I'm going to scrap this project and start again. So that's all the official fails for this month. I have a feeling some of my finished objects may somewhat fall into the fail category, even if it's temporarily. But yeah, let me talk you through all of my finished pieces. So first finished piece for this month I don't actually have with me because it was a gift knit, and it's the first official gift knit that I have knit and finished and sent off, and it's gone and the person's received it. Yay. And I did talk about it last month because I actually knitted, it was a beanie and I knitted it twice. The first time I kind of like freestyled it, and that's the one that I showed last month. I then ripped it back and I redid the beanie following a pattern. So the pattern that I followed was the Beanie Alba by Jocelyn and Fossey. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. It calls for worsted weight yarn and is knit on 4.5mm needles. It's super simple beanie. It's basically knit from the brim up. You just cast on however many stitches for your size, establish a 1x1 rib, and you continue to knit that up until you reach the desired length, and then you work some decreases to shape the crown on the piece. Very, very basic, very easy. So I use that same Temu yarn that I had in my Melon Mood sweater, which was the wool. So it's 80% wool, 20% polyester blend in black. I had some from my sweater, but I also had some like lying around in my stash that was still like allocated towards the sweater because I never fully finished it. But I used about 1.5 balls to make my beanie, and I ended up knitting that one on 5mm needles. So the pattern calls for 4.5, and the first one I made on 4.5mm needles, but it was quite like hard on my arms. So I did size up to the 5mm, and I think it was perfectly fine. Because I sized up in my needles though, I intended to make like the largest size beanie because it was for a male friend, so largest size. But because I was using larger needles, I did one size down from the biggest. So I knit size 5, which is the second largest size. I tried it on myself. I think it's a little bit too big for my head. So if I was to make myself one, I would just make a smaller size than that. And the only other thing I changed on it is I did a tubular cast on instead of like a standard cast on. But all up, that took me 12 hours to knit. I did it over 4 days, and it cost $6.11 to make. I feel like I've got the yarn consumption wrong for that because I feel like I used less yarn than I thought I did. But anyways, it was a really easy peasy knit. It's a super basic beanie, but I actually really like the look of the beanie, so I might eventually make myself one. So that's the Beanie Alba. Right, next finished piece I have is yet another beanie, because apparently I'm a beanie person now. But this is the Cinnamon Beanie. It's a free pattern by Drops Design. This is one that has featured on my like what I want in it this year type of thing. The reason why I like it so much is because it gives me Oslo hat vibes, apart from it's free. But the pattern calls for a DK, it says DK worsted, so their Drops Lima yarn is what it's meant to be knit in on 3.5mm needles. Very, very simple construction. You knit the brim, it's got like a folded brim here, so you basically just knit a big chunk in stock knit and then you seam it together. You then do some ribbing just for like fit purposes. You flip your work so that you then work on the wrong side, and you just continue to knit stock knit until you want to get to the shaping. And so the shaping for the crown, you just divide by 3, and then you do some decreases either side of your markers to create the shape. Now you will notice mine is still attached, and that's because I'm not 100% sure whether or not I like the fit of this or not. So let me tell you about my piece. So for mine, this is the first pattern that I've used the actual recommended yarn for. Like, this is groundbreaking. I've obviously placed a drops order and bought a bunch of drops yarn. So you're going to see drops featuring a lot in my upcoming videos. Also, even today, like, most of the patterns that I've made are actually drops patterns. Like, I don't know how that happened, but what is. But anyways, yeah, not only did I make the beanie in the recommended yarn, I also used the same color that's pictured here. I think it looks a little bit different in real life than it does in the photo, but you know, it is what it is. So yes, I've used Drops Lima. So that's a 65% wool, 35% alpaca blend, and this is the colorway 9024 Almond. And in total, I use just over 2 balls of yarn for this. So the pattern calls for 3 no matter what size you make, but I literally swapped to a new ball, like literally as we're doing these crown decreases up here. So if you knit this bit a little bit shorter, you could totally get away with just 2 balls of Lima. So if you've got that lying around in your stash, this might be a good one to use that up on. I did knit it in the 3.5, with the 3.5 millimeter needles, and the pattern's called for, and the size that I did was the smaller size, so it's like a small medium, and then there's the medium large size as well. The only changes from the pattern that I did is I used Judy's Magic Cast On to just make seaming together the folded brim a lot easier and look a little bit neater and more polished, which it definitely does, because this inside bit is where you would see the seam, but you can see it just looks like pill bumps, which is really nice. The pattern also calls for you to start the ribbing straight away after you seam together the pieces, and I did initially do that, but then when you folded the brim over, you could I'll kind of do it like this, you could kind of see like the little pearl bumps like just peeking through, and I didn't really like the look of that, so I ripped it back and I did a little bit of stockinette so that when you fold it, you only see stockinette stitch on the fold, and then the ribbing just sits a little bit higher up on the inside. So that's the only thing I changed. This piece took me 22 hours to make, and I did it over the course of 6 days, and the total cost for this would be $9.25. So pattern's super easy peasy, even though it's drops patterns are notoriously badly written, but beanie is so simple to construct, like there's nothing confusing about it. This yarn, I'm not gonna lie, like the first ball of yarn that I was working with, it felt like I was knitting with cardboard. Like, it was horrible. I did not like the feel on my fingers, and I don't know if it was just the first ball or I got used to it, but it felt better as I continued to work the beanie and I used the other ball of yarn. I also have a different colorway in my stash, and I don't feel like it feels nearly as rough as this colorway does. So maybe it's just this colorway, but like, I don't get it, because everyone's like, oh my gosh, Drops Lima is like one of the best. Everyone's always using Drops Lima or saying that they love Drops Lima, and I was like, why? I don't understand. But I have blocked this, and it definitely like softened up and got a lot more like floppy and nice after blocking. So like, I don't know how on board I am to knit a jumper in purely Drops Lima. I do have plans for a project which is Lima with a mohair, so we'll see how that goes, but like based on my first impressions, it's like, did I make a mistake buying that yarn? Like, should I have brought a different one? But yeah, so I didn't enjoy that. I also found that knitting on 3.5 millimeters was a bit like tough on my arms. I actually in this month got to the point where I was starting to get like RSI symptoms like in my forearm on my left hand side, and I think it's just because I sit like this with like a little T-Rex arm, and it doesn't really move, but it's like sitting there holding my work type of thing. And I like, now reflecting on everything that I've done in this month, I kind of understand why I might have some RSI symptoms, but I thought it was from this triggered it, but I've knit a lot this month, so that's probably what it is. But yeah, what else about my I was going to call it the Oslo hat. It gives me Oslo hat vibes, that's why I like it. But the only thing is, yeah, in terms of fit, I'm just not 100% sure if I like how this fits. You can kind of see I'll put like a little footage here. Kind of cinches in against my head a little bit more than I would like. Again, I'm just trying to compare it against like the photo that's online. It looks really like slouchy. So I might end up ripping this back and knitting the size larger. I haven't 100% made up my mind on that. So this one might actually technically be a fail, but I will be reknitting it. If I do rip it back, it will be reknit, so it's still going to exist. If I do reknit it as well, I don't think I will do the ribbing. I think instead, once I seam, I might just move on to some double knitting for a section and then turn my work and knit it. I think that will work better. The double knitting should cinch it in, and it should also avoid seeing anything here. And I'm hoping that it also hides that kind of fact that you can see that kind of indent from the seam where we've gone from like double thickness to single thickness. I'm hoping doing double knitting might disguise it a little bit too. And I'm pretty sure the original Oslo has double knitting and no ribbing on the inside bit, but I don't have the pattern for that, so I don't actually know. So we might redo that. We might re-see her again in the future. I will let you know if I end up re-knitting it. All right, next piece. I'm so happy she's finished. You may recognize her from past episodes where I keep saying, this should be finished in the next month because it's so quick and easy to make. Well, now she is finished. So this was my, full moon cardigan. Another drops pattern. Oh my god. This is my full moon cardigan, which is a free pattern by Drops Design. So it calls for Aran or worsted weight. They say to knit it in their Drops Air yarn on 6mm needles. In terms of construction for this one, it is actually pretty simple. It is knit top down because it's a cardigan. The body is knit flat, sleeves are knit in the round. You've got the, did I just say that? Raglan shape shoulders, and it's knit in a brioche rib. The pattern calls it English rib, but I'm pretty sure it's brioche rib. It's actually quite an easy construction once you understand the pattern, but you're just basically casting on some stitches along the kind of like top bit here. You do some increases immediately, and then you establish your brioche ribbing. As you work your yoke down, you're doing some increases for the raglan line, and you also work some increases for the kind of shaping of the neckline, so you get that V for your cardigan. Once you reach the desired length, you then separate body and sleeves. You continue to work the body down flat and brioche until you get to a few centimeters before your desired like length in the body, and then it's got a charted pattern that you knit on the bottom there. Once you finish that, you would then do there's a round of increases before you move on to your ribbing. The increases are there so because you're sizing down 2 needle sizes for the ribbing, so it just allows that ribbing to not be too tight, which I'll get to in a second. Once you've done that, you then pick up your sleeve stitches and you do brioche in the round for the sleeve. Once you reach the side length, you just finish off the ribbing again, and then you would pick up stitches and knit your button band and attach your buttons, which I haven't done yet because I'm not sure which ones I want to use. So for my piece, I've used more Temu yarn, and it's that 100% cashmere yarn in the colour Skin Powder, which is cream. I don't like the colour, guys. I've said it multiple times. So I ended up using 4 balls of that yarn, and I paired that with a Temu mohair blend, which was 30% mohair, 20% merino wool, and 50% acrylic, also in the colour cream. I ended up using about 3 balls. So I hold 2 strands of the mohair, 1 strand of the cashmere. The reason I did that was more so just to use up some of the mohair, and also because the yarns are very thin, it would help a little bit with getting to a yarn weight that was more closer to the pattern. I did use the same needle size, so I knit this in 6mm needles, and because my gauge was a little bit off, I did size up and I knitted the size large. The things that I changed on this is I did do Italian bind offs on my finishing edges. I actually did 2 different types of bind offs on these, which I think I mentioned last episode. So the sleeves I did standard Italian bind off, and on the body I did a tubular Italian bind off, mainly just so I could see what the difference looked like when using like the same yarn. I'd actually be able to see a difference. I think I just enjoy standard Italian bind off a little bit more than tubular. I don't know. I feel like tubular is probably a little bit like a neater edge, but you get that kind of line. Can you see that kind of line from the stitches? But overall, I feel like it maybe looks a little bit neater versus the standard bind off. I'm not sure. I don't really care. I think I gravitate more towards just standard bind off because it's like less steps to do. But I did that. I also as you see on the sleeves. I did end up doing the charted pattern on the sleeves. I think I might have mentioned that last episode as well. And then for the button band, I, instead of doing the picking up and doing the ribbing, which was meant to be a horizontal rib, I followed the cardigan number 6 button band instructions, which is like a long vertical rib. So you knit the button band separately and then you just attach it with a crochet hook and seam it on the inside. I will say that my seaming's not like the best on this piece. It looks a little bit messy, but anyways. So I knit this over the course of 14 weeks in the end, and it took me 85 hours to finish the piece. Technically, we're not 100% finished because we don't have buttons, but like, do I have the buttons here somewhere? So I brought like 3 or 4 sets of buttons for this cardigan now, but because of the cream color, the buttons are always a little bit too white. So I brought these, what did I have? I've got shell buttons that I could use for this one, the same as the ones I used on my cardigan number 6. That's one option. I then brought some like, they've got like a metal edge, but they've got like a enamel, like white enamel top to them, but it's too white against the yellow of this cardigan. I then brought some like pearl looking buttons in the like cream color of pearl, so not like white, but cream, and they're still too white against this cream color. I feel like it's looking adequately cream today. This lighting must be like better. I think it looks more true to color here than it has in past videos. But then I also picked up these like gold buttons, and I thought, I don't know, what do we think of like the gold button? I feel like it's a bit cheap looking. I don't know if I like these buttons with this piece, but I've got to decide and like put some buttons on so that it's finish. But yeah, minus buttons, since I haven't picked them, the total cost of this piece came to only $19.32. $19.32. Like, that is so super duper cheap. Anyways, so my thoughts on this one. At first I was like really negative towards this piece, mainly because of the way that the pattern's written. It's drops pattern. It's not that well written. They like to cram as many instructions as they can into like one sentence. So something like a cardigan, you've got a lot of different like increases happening at the same time, and it's like yoke section, you're doing a lot. It's just a lot easier to write out that yoke section in a way that makes sense. And once you do, like, I realized that this is actually very basic, very basic construction, very basic cardigan. It's actually very simple. Also, as I started knitting it, like, this yarn combo is so nice. It's so lovely and soft. It feels so nice. It's squishy. And because it was like a new stitch type and stuff, and the way the fabric was coming out, I got really excited about actually working on this piece. It was coming together relatively quickly. So it became a very enjoyable knit for me. I actually really enjoyed it once I got going on it. I also really like the fact that I have used yarn that's probably too thin, but it gives me this really nice, like, gapey kind of fabric that is like super nice and lightweight again, but just it looks effective. Like, I'm really liking the stitch type. I will say brioche stitch is, I've heard some negative things around brioche. Some people love brioche and some people are like, I will never do brioche ever again. I enjoyed brioche. I think it's not hard. It does require a little bit more concentration because there are a few more steps to it. Brioche knitting flat's pretty easy. Brioche in the round requires a little bit more concentration because you alternate between a knit row and a purl row, so the sequence is slightly different between those two rows. And there are quite a few mistakes on my first sleeve that I did as well, whilst I was getting the hang of that. But once you start to understand the brioche and you can see the different stitches, you can read your work, and then it also helps if you have made a mistake, because then you know how to work backwards to like go back and correct that mistake. Or if you've like missed a yarn over something, you'll be able to recognize that and know how to like pick up a strand and create that yarn over without having to like rip back masses of work. So I actually enjoy brioche. I would totally do a brioche piece again, 100%. What else about this? I think I've already mentioned what I just kind of don't like about this. The main thing I dislike is the color. Every single time I pick this up, I'm like, I hate the color, and I still hate the color. I think it looks okay on, but I don't know. The fit of this isn't like the greatest. Like the button band, the ribbing on the bottom's a bit too tight, and like this button band's a bit messy, and there are a few mistakes in my brioche as well because of the color. I don't know, this one might just get gifted or like donated. I don't know if I'll end up keeping it because it's mainly the color. If the color was different, I would probably end up keeping it, but I just don't think this color works for me. I don't know. I'll hold on to it for a little while. If we don't wear it, we're going to donate it because this is yarn that I don't want to keep. I have no other purpose for this yarn. I'm not going to use it again. So, and I've got more in my stash that I need to use up too. So it's like, just go. Like, you can go. If I was to do another one as well, I do have black yarn that I was going to do a black one, but I've got so many new project ideas all of a sudden since doing this freaking yarn buying lately. I don't think I'll do the pattern on this. Actually, I don't think I'll do the pattern at all. I think I'll just skip the pattern and just do straight brioche because I think, although I like the look of this pattern, I think it's cute. At the same time, I'm just like, I think overall would also, like, just overall ribs would also look nice. I don't know. Like, I've done it once. So in the next edition, I might not do it. Anyways, the only other things I would change on this, if I do it next time, is I might possibly size up. Mainly just for the body. I think the arms are good sizing, but the body could be maybe a little bit more eased to it. If I don't size up in the body, I definitely have to do more increases to make that ribbing fit better on the body. Also, I'd pick up stitches on the underarms. I didn't call that out, but you can see on the underarms, because I didn't pick up any stitches when I was picking up my underarm sleeves, there's like a massive hole there. So I should have picked up additional stitches to kind of close off that hole, but I'll have to go back and like tidy that up because they are pretty obvious when wearing it. Like, you can see the holes in the piece. So I don't love that. I will definitely do that differently. I would also consider sizing down like just 0.5 millimeter in needles when I do brioche in the round, because I feel like my gauge is a lot looser when working in the round than when working flat. And so I think that's also contributed to the sleeves being like quite large because I've knitted in a little bit looser. There was initially like quite an obvious line, and like I can kind of still see it in real life, but it's less. I don't think it's super noticeable. I tried to film it and I was like, you can't even tell. But in real life, you can see like a little bit of a difference. Like, the sleeve stitches are definitely a little bit looser than the flat stitches. So sizing down will just help with that gauge. Whoops, there goes the buttons. So yeah, that's my full moon cardigan done and dusted. I am glad to kind of see her go, to be honest. Like, as much as I enjoyed working on her, it's time for something new. I'm kind of sick of her hanging around. And talking about something new, next up, we have an entirely finished sweater that I haven't even mentioned once so far. No joke, I finished this entire piece in a couple weeks. Like, this is crazy. This wasn't even on my like 2025 plans or anything. I was buying some yarn. Well, actually, I wasn't even buying yarn at that point. I was just looking up colorways. And then I realized that I could buy this yarn. It was actually reasonably affordable. And so I was trying to compare colorways, and I saw someone with this piece like in a project. And I was like, oh, that looks like a really nice jumper. And lo and behold, it's another freaking Drops pattern. So this one is the Bronze Summer sweater by Drops. Again, free pattern being Drops. It's an Aran worsted weight knit, so they call for their Drops ear for this piece, and it's now on 5 millimeter needles. Again, very, very simple knit. I feel like with all Drops patterns, they've got like a base pattern, and then they just kind of adapt that base pattern based on a different yarn weight, or maybe like a different pattern. Like for this one, for example, they've just put like a lace design down the sleeve. But you'll look and there'll be some other ones that have like a cable pattern that runs down the sleeve, but the construction is otherwise like identical. So once you've like knit and understood one Drops pattern, I feel like you're pretty good to knit something of the same style again without even like looking super easy. But anyways, it is knit top down. We've got raglan seams there, and you can see it's all over stock net with the lace detail that runs down the sleeve there. The entire piece is knit in the round. Super, super easy. You just cast on and you knit your 1x1 rib here. You then start establishing your yoke. So you work your raglans, you establish your lace pattern. Try to show you it better there. Kind of see. Might have to try try this on and put it. Here we are. So you establish your lace pattern that you can see there. So you just work down until you reach desired length. You separate body and sleeves. You continue to knit the body down and stockinette until you reach your desired length. To finish off with some ribbing. Sleeves, you just pick up, continue to knit in the round, continuing your lace pattern all the way down. There are some gradual decreases that run down the sleeve. Once you hit your desired length, again, you just finish with some ribbing on the cuff and bind off, and then you're done. Like, so easy, so easy. Now for my piece, yet again, we're just copying what the pattern said. So I've used Drops Air for this pattern, which is the same as what it called for. So Drops Air is 65% alpaca, 28% polyamide, and 7% wool. It is what they call a blow-in yarn. So it's basically like a little mesh tube with like fibers blown into it. It's basically my understanding. So this is a thick yarn, which I have mentioned multiple times. I don't think I like thick yarns, and I don't. But because this one is so like lightweight and airy, hence its name, Drops Air, I actually really like it. I had no issues like knitting with this, and I think because it is knit on 5mm needles, it's a little bit tight of a gauge. I'm not sure what it actually says on the yarn is the recommended needle size, but I feel like this one might be like a size down from what's recommended, possibly. But I don't feel like the stitches look huge or anything like that. Like, they look nice and neat, and it's lightweight. Yeah, it's super warm. Like, love this. I use the color same as the pattern yet again, and that is 02 Wheat. But again, in real life, I don't know if it looks that different to the picture in this view, but I feel like in the picture it looked more like a greigey undertone, but in real life this is more of like a true oatmeal kind of color. Like, it's got a bit of warmth to it. So at first I was a little bit like, the color, but once I've knitted up the piece, I'm like, oh yeah, it's perfect. It's like, if you want a true oatmeal kind of color, wheat is the way to go. All up, I used 6.5 balls on this. I used the same recommended needles, which are 5mm, and I knit it in a size large. So I did make some changes to my piece versus what the pattern called for. So first thing I did was tubular cast on for the neckline, just to give it a bit of a neat edge. I wasn't meaning like row gauge. Based on the pattern, you meant to do like 27 raglan increases. Once I hit 20 raglan increases, I measured my yoke depth, and I still had quite a bit more length to get out of it. So I started to space out my raglans. So I did 2 knit rounds in between each raglan for the last few. I then decided to add on 2 more raglans after that, but I only increased on the body, not on the sleeves. So that means my raglan line still continues all the way down the yoke. If you just knit your raglans, then you stop, but you want more depth, you'd see like a harsh stop in your raglan line, which is what I've got on my zipper sweater. I'll show you in a second. I'll point it out. So instead of like just knitting the raglans as per pattern, stopping, and then knitting extra length like just normally, I just spaced out those raglan stitches, and so that line kind of seems like it still continues all the way down into the armpit. This doesn't have any shaping in the pattern, so I also attempted to add in some shaping. Now, typically short rows you would work this back section, but the short rows need to go like over into this shoulder section, but the shoulder obviously has this lace pattern, so I don't know how to work in short rows with the lace pattern being there. So what I did is the Mellow Mood sweater that I knit actually had I guess short rows in a way, but basically what she did in that pattern was she just knitted, before separating body and sleeves, she just knitted a flat section between the 2 back raglans, so you get a little bit of extra length fabric. So that's what I did for mine. I just knitted an extra like 1.5 inches or so of fabric, and you can kind of see here, I picked up my underarm stitches, that this little bit here is the extra length that I added. I probably could have added a little bit more, to be honest, but I wasn't sure how far I could push it or how it would fit my piece. But I did that, and then because I had that extra fabric there, it did mean I had to pick up extra sleeve stitches just to close off that gap. So my sleeves, because of those extra stitches there, are actually 1 size up from the actual piece, which is the stitch count for the body is actually somewhere in between a large and extra large, because I did those couple additional raglans on my yoke anyways. I then also, to try avoid holes in my underarms, like what I had on my other cardigan I just showed you, I did pick up additional stitches, which I immediately decreased just on those underarm joints. This side still doesn't look right. Like there still looks like there's a hole on the side. Where's the camera? There we are. So you can see that one still looks like there's a hole there. So I'll have to go back and like maybe tidy that stitch up a little bit. But I did add in an additional stitch. I just maybe didn't add it in the right place. I don't know what happened there, but that's definitely like a stretched out section. So I'll go back and finish that. I haven't weaved in my ends, as you can tell, there's like ends hanging out everywhere. I literally just finished this, so that's why. I also sleeve decreases. I did them slightly less frequent than what the pattern called for. So I think I was like 4 stitches larger than what I should have been once I reached the cuff. So I just did balanced decrease all around the cuff. So I didn't listen to what the pattern said in terms of cuff decreases, because once you get to the cuff it does say just to decrease across this patterned section and not on the back section, but I instead just put it into a calculator and did a balanced decrease all the way around for the cuff to bring it into my size. The large and extra large had the same like cuff stitch count, so I just brought it down to that and then did ribbing, and I finished off with Italian and bind off, of course. Probably should have done tubular bind off to keep it looking similar to like the cast on. I feel like it looks similar enough, like no one's going to notice that anyways, and it's again, it just avoids having to do setup rounds. Then lastly, for my hem, I opted for a split hem. So you can see here I did it like a kind of overlapping split hem with a little bit of ribbing, and I've done my back hem just a smidge longer than my front hem. So I followed a tutorial, which I do have a project blog coming up for that, so I will have all the links to the tutorials that I followed for any like changes that I did in there. But yeah, that's basically what I did for the hem. The hem, I don't know, I think maybe I should not have sized down in my needles for the hem, because it does, like it pulls apart a little bit more than I would like at this hem line. I kind of was expecting that, but wasn't expecting it at the same time, because my piece isn't as oversized as I really wanted it to be. So I think that's why the hem like splits out a little bit more than I wanted it to be anyways. Overall, this took me 16 days to knit. I've been watching these videos where people are like, I knit a sweater in a week, and I was like, there's no way I can do it in a week. But I was like, I wonder if I can do a sweater in 2 weeks. And that's why I knit this so quickly, because I was like, kind of set myself that mini challenge to finish it. And this was the only project I had yarn for, like the largest needles combo, so it should have technically been the quickest knit I could possibly do. So that's why I knitted this particular piece randomly, because I now had the yarn for it, and I wanted to do a really quick project that I could finish, or challenge myself to finish. And I kind of did it, like it's 16 days. It took me a total of 83 hours. So it wasn't necessarily that I knitted any faster, it's just that I spent more time every day working on this project. One day I spent a total of like 10 hours working on this piece. Like I was just dedicated to it, and I was like, got to get it done. And that's why my arm hurts. But all up, I used, how much did I say how much I used? I used 6.5 balls of the yarn. So pattern was free, so it's cost me $46.35 to make, which I think is great. So anyways, like I kind of said before, even though this is a drops pattern, it was super simple construction. The original pattern doesn't have any shaping or anything like that. There's nothing really complicated about it. So because there's so few steps that drops has to like describe to you and squish into one sentence, it makes reading the pattern a lot easier. This one I didn't need to write out or anything like that. I could just easily look at it and understand it. It was pretty straightforward because it's such a basic like raglan. There's nothing complicated to it. I do wish though that they noted on the piece like what size the model was and what she was wearing, because her piece, the picture here, it looks really, really oversized, and on me it definitely doesn't look that oversized. They do have that is it schematic, is that the right word for it, the measurements, And so I knew making the size that I was making that I would have around about 10 centimeters of positive ease. I should have sized up though to get more ease. And I kind of was looking at people's project photos as well. And the people who did make an extra large, it seemed to look like quite massive. So I didn't want it like too big. But now that I've finished, I also brought like 8 balls of yarn, which I think was the recommended yarn to buy, and I have 1.5 balls left over. So I definitely could have sized up and I would have had enough yarn to make the extra large. So I'm kind of like, oh, but I'm definitely not ripping this back because I did need to rip back a little bit of this when I was doing like my hem ribbing or something down here I mucked up, and so I ripped back a little bit and the yarn was just like sticking to itself and like it was all matted, and I was like, this is probably not a good one to unravel is my feelings. So it is what it is. So if you are making this, check the schematic measurements and choose a flat measurement that's going to give you the right amount of ease that you want. Like I said, I really like this yarn. Is like, it's so nice and like soft and lightweight, so it's really nice to actually knit with. And it wasn't necessarily like a super duper quick knit for me, but it was a quicker, it's like one of the quick knits that I've done. I think like most of my cardigans have been quite like loose gauge, large needles. This was larger needles, so it was relatively quick to work up because of that. But yeah, I don't know, this is warm and cozy. It's going to be nice to wear in winter. It's nice against the skin. This lace pattern that you see here, I think that's what makes it look more handmade, because you just won't see a commercial piece with a lace pattern like that. It's a really pretty lace. If you didn't do the lace pattern and you just did like a basic raglan like this, it would look super commercial. But yeah, other than that, yeah, I'm just mad that I've got yarn left over, so I could have sized up and got like a looser fit, which would have been more desirable for me in this piece, but I think it still looks fine as is. So yeah, overall I'm pretty happy with it. I'm happy that I made it so quickly in like 2 weeks. That was insane. I almost forgot this. I almost forgot the sock. I made a sock, guys. So I'm calling this a finished object, but it is only one sock, but I have no intentions of making a second one. So this is kind of finished. This is the Petal Drop Socks. It's a pattern by Florence Miller. Fingering away or sock yarn, knit on 2.25 millimeter needles. This one's knit, you start from the cuff here and you knit it all the way down in this beautiful lace pattern. Let me show you it stretched out. This lovely lace pattern. It looks so nice. Love it. Love it. It's a really it looks really complicated, but it's a very simple kind of pattern, really. So you cast on and you do like a 1x1 twisted rib for this cuff bit. You then establish your like little lace pattern and you knit the leg part of the sock for as long as you want. You've got the slip stitch heel and gusset. You then move over and do half lace, half stockinette for that bit for as long as you need to do that bit for. And then you finish off with the kind of, I don't know what this particular toe is called, where you just like decrease that type of toe. So the yarn I used for the sock was this Temu yarn. This is the same yarn that I'm using for my ribbed tee. It's just obviously in white. So it is 70% merino wool, 20% nylon, 10% silk. This one's 01, which is white, and I used half a ball on my one sock. So if I was to do the second one, would be 1 ball total. I did knit it on 2.25 millimeter needle or DPNs. I use DPNs for mine because I struggle with magic loop and getting lettering. So I use DPNs, and I am not meaning gauge with this yarn. I think this yarn is like thinner than a fingering weight. I kind of thought it was a fingering weight, but like, because I'm knitting a swatch using an actual fingering weight yarn from Drops, and I feel like they look like the same thickness, but this one must be a little bit thinner because the sock is very like opaque. No, not opaque. Sheer. It's quite sheer and it's quite see-through. Like, I don't know if you can really see, you can see lettering from on that side, but like, I don't know, you can see like my nail color like right through it. Like, it's just, the stitches are just really stretched out and you can see right through the sock. So I don't really love that. I also don't like the feel of the sock when I put it on my foot and wear it like in a shoe. Like, it just, I can feel like every stitch, like there's not enough cushiness, I don't know, to it. But anyways, obviously I'm not quite on gauge, and when I first initially cast it on, like there was no way it was going to fit over on my calf. So I ended up just kind of winging it, and I ended up doing, how many did I do? 12 full lace repeats on this cuff, and then I did some decreases to cinch it in because the rest needed to be a lot smaller. So you can see on the side here that I did some decrease. I'm pretty proud of myself for doing that actually, because I totally just worked that out and did a decrease down. I've got the same on the other side. There's another one just over here. So you can see my decreases. They look really nice and neat. Like I'm kind of like super impressed. So I did that and then brought it down. So the rest of the sock is 10 full lace repeats. So it's still slightly different to the pattern. I think the stitch count down here for the bottom half was the same as per pattern. But yeah, that's how I kind of modified the sizing for my particular foot. So I knit this over 12 days. This took me ages. This took 32 hours to knit this one sock. Hence why also I'm like, I don't really need a second one. But because I only use that little yarn, it's cheap yarn anyways, it cost me $1.86 for my one sock. Now, socks are not something that I thought I would ever make. They were not necessarily something on my like, ooh, I hate that, like it's a fugly design kind of category list. But socks are something that I'm like, I don't have any practical use for socks in my life, like knitted socks. I am a true millennial through and through, so I only wear ankle socks for starters. No matter what shoe it is, it's an ankle sock. So having a long sock is just not something I'm used to in my wardrobe. I thought it could look cute, like popping out of the top of like my Chelsea boots, and I'll put a photo here. That's how I kind of like tried them on. I was like, yeah, it does kind of look cute, but I also don't know how practical that is. And also, I don't know if I really need like a full sock for that. I could just like knit a tube and have like a small leg warmer situation to achieve that result. But anyways, I did want to like eventually knit a sock because there's new techniques with sock knitting that you don't get from other pieces. And now I've done it. I was literally like, I've got stuff to work on. I think this is like, I had my full moon cardigan like just hanging out and my zipper sweater just hanging out. I was like, I need to work on those. Like I need to get them finished. But instead, I picked up and made a fucking random sock. Like, what are you doing? Anyways, it was fun to knit. I did enjoy knitting this. And I think because I was like procrastinating and wanted the distraction from my other projects, like I was really focused in on this. And I was like, yeah, let me do these tiny, tiny stitches. I thought I just saw a hole, but no, it's fine. And because it's this cute lace pattern and like, you know, you're doing like different steps, and then I had to do my decreases and work that out. So this whole bit was like engaging, and then I had like the heel to do. Once I got past this heel and these increases, this bit was a little bit like I totally lost motivation by this point, but I was like, no, let's just finish. I need to finish something. So I did. I finished one sock. But yeah, I'm happy that I did it because I learned some new techniques. It's super cute, it's super dainty. Like if you like lace socks, I highly recommend this sock pattern. There's a paid, is it a paid pattern? I can't remember if I paid for it, but there is a written pattern, and then she also does a video tutorial. To be honest, I just watched a video tutorial and I was able to do this whole thing without even needing to look at the pattern. Like she gives such a detailed tutorial, which I love. Like thank you for that. So yeah, like maybe one day I might knit the second one just so I do have a matching pair since I've got the yarn here, but I don't know. I'm pretty happy with just one sock. Oh, the only other thing that I did wrong, which I think you guys might have already seen if you were paying attention, is I seamed my sock together on the wrong freaking side. So now I've got this ugly seam on this outside. Because you can see when I was knitting in the round, my pieces tend to turn like inside out. So you can see it looks perfect on the inside. Look at that nice seamless join there. Look how lovely that looks. I did make a little bit of a mistake. I dropped some stitches right towards the end and I had to go pick them up and weave them in, so that bit's a little bit like bulky. And then I was like, oh, look how perfect that is. Turn my sock in the right way, and then I've got this fugly seam there. Like how annoying is that? But I'm not going to like rip it back or anything because again, I have no use for the sock. It's just pretty to look at, and I'm happy that I made one sock. Maybe one day in the future, if I have some nicer fingering weight yarn, I might maybe redo a sock in the future. We'll see. Wowie, okay, that's all the finished objects done. That was a lot of finished objects, but we've got one more thing to talk about really quickly because I haven't actually worked on this at all, but I do want to just call out my zipper sweater light. She is still in existence. I did actually block this piece because I had to wash all of that like unraveled yarn, and so I just like, oh, I'll block this at the same time and just check how much it's going to kind of grow. I don't think it's actually changed much. I didn't measure it beforehand. I just kind of tried it on again. I don't think it's grown too much. The yarn has like plumped up kind of nicely, but yeah, I've still just got to like finish off the sleeves and then put the zipper in, and then this piece will be done. So I'm just going to point out though that raglan line that I was talking about before. You can see how I've added extra length there. I stopped my raglan increases and I was like, oh, I would like my yoke to be a little bit longer in depth, and so I just knitted straight, well, normal for a bit without any increases, and you can see that line just stops. So by spacing out those raglan lines, you can stretch out your yoke but still keep like the raglan line going. This smells nice because I used wool wash. But yeah, that's the zipper sweater light. So this is going to be like one of my main focuses. I also want to cast on my version of the zipper sweater so that I can kind of compare side by side in terms of like sizing, because this one I've mucked up my stitch counts, and I initially I've got fluffs on my lips. This one, the stitch count is like all over the show because I initially cast it on as a medium thinking that I was close enough to gauge for that, but then as I was knitting I remeasured and I was like, oh no, I'm way off, and so I continued knitting to a size large, I think. And then I added some extra yoke depth, which to be honest, I probably didn't need to add that extra yoke depth. And then the sleeves, I think are like an extra large in terms of size. So this one's all over the show, and I'm a little bit concerned now that the zipper opening, like the zipper is longer than the opening, but only just. So I kind of want to have this one nearby just so I've got like stitches that I can kind of compare against when I'm doing my piece. It's mainly just for the yoke, I think. So if I can get working on that whilst I continue to work on this, I don't know, it's going to be boring having two zipper sweaters that look identical that I'm going to be working on at the same time, but I think I just need to focus in on get them done. Also behind me that you can't see, I have like, how many gauge swatches do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gauge swatches. So we may also have a new cast on by the time the next video rolls around as well, because this is boring stockinette stitch. So I kind of want to pick up a piece that's not boring stockinette stitch, but I did do a swatch for a chunky cable sweater, but I don't like the color of the yarn that I purchased for that. So you'll hear all my plans for this yarn, by the way. This is all new yarn that I've acquired recently. I'm still waiting for one more order to come through, and then I did film the video for it, but then I brought more yarn, so now I have to refilm the video. So you'll see all the colors, and I'll talk through all the plans that I have for this yarn, because I brought each yarn with a project in mind. But yeah, the chunky knit sweater was the one that I was hoping to start working on because it's cables, and that would then give me something different to work on than stockinette, and I could swap and change between the two. So when I get bored of stockinette, I can work some cables, vice versa. When I get sick of doing all the detailed cable work, I can work something really boring and just like pump out a good chunk. But yeah, I don't like that color. So now I've done a few other swatches with yarn, and I'm just like, there's another cable piece, but it's a bit more of a stretch out, like boring cable. So there's a lot more stockinette that's been worked. So that one's kind of still in the boring category. There's another one it's actually another brioche piece. I didn't realize it at the time that it was a brioche knit, but it's done like kind of staggered, kind of like a seed stitch, I guess, or moss stitch, but in like brioche is the best way that I can describe that one. But then I'm like, I'm going to have to concentrate too much on that one, because I'm going to have to make sure that I'm on the right row, starting with the right stitch, not to muck up that pattern. And so now I'm okay watching for like the 5th item. Like, I don't know. I'm going to pick one of them though. I've got to have more than zipper sweaters. But I want to get my zipper sweater done because I want to compare sizing, and also it's going to be something practical I'm going to get a lot of wear out of. So that's why I'm kind of like, got to get working on her. get her done because it's fucking hot today, but winter's coming. We had one cold week where it was like 17 degrees and I was like, ooh, I could have worn a jumper, but I don't have any because I haven't finished any. I don't really leave the house enough to like wear these pieces, but some of these sweaters I reckon are going to be good like house sweaters because they've got higher necklines, so it's going to keep me feeling warm, because cardigans or anything that's got like a lower neckline I don't feel like is warm enough for those really cold days when you're like lounging around. I feel like I then need to put a scarf on. But anyways, I'm rambling again. Oh my gosh. So yeah, that concludes today's episode. Lots of updates, lots of things happening, lots of things going to be happening. Hopefully I have some other new pieces on the needle soon too. I kind of working on that bronze summer sweater and just working on that alone. I kind of enjoyed it. Versus having multiple projects, because I was thinking about before, I had like 4 active projects on my needles and I was like, it's a lot, because then I kind of forget about one and then I'm like, shit, I need to work on it. So I've got some progress updates and it was becoming a bit of a chore to work on each piece, whereas if I've just got one to concentrate on, it's kind of nice. I don't know. But yeah, anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you've made it to the end, thumbs up to you. I wish I could give you guys a thumbs up as well. But yeah, like, subscribe, do all that jazz. I've got yarn hauls coming. You'll see project vlogs for the things that I've mentioned. The cinnamon beanie, the bronze sweater, the zipper sweater. We'll be having a project vlog. The what was the other one? Full moon. We've got a lot of project vlogs coming. I'll do the unraveling video. I've got lots of videos banked up, which is nice to have. So subscribe if you want to see those when they're posted. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next month with more updates. Bye guys. I can feel fluffs on me. Where are you? Do I need to shut the blinds? Is the sunshine coming in? Oh, my arm's getting sore. Actually, was it this month that I finished it or last month? Yeah, no, I talked about the first edition. Whew, I can feel the sweat like dripping down my forearm. It's disgusting. I don't know why I did that. It's hot. I'm going crazy. My back is literally wet from sweat. It's disgusting. I gotta stop drinking the wine. The wine's making me like pucker a little bit, and it's making like saliva happen in my mouth, and I try to talk and it's like too much. I don't know where I'm going with this train of thought. It's like trucks and aeroplanes going past at the same time, making so much noise outside. Oh my god, there's so much noise. People need quieter vehicles. This is a bad time of the day to be filming.